Welcome back, everyone, to the Cancel for Maintenance podcast. If this is your first time joining us, we are a show that takes a behind-the-scenes look into the gritty, non-glamorous life of aviation maintenance. We share some laughs, impart some wisdom, all in hopes of giving you that split seconds relief in your day that can hopefully prevent a mishap. I am your co-host, Six.
I'm MVP.
And our third and final host, Shoreline, is here again in the back, silently monitoring our audio, making sure our faces stay fit for radio. Today, we want to explore / reemphasize the importance of parts, specifically inspecting your parts. Some time ago, we talked about owner-produced parts and how that's a good / bad thing. But as of right now, the news media has reported that at least 4 commercial airlines have identified some of their aircraft have fake or unauthorized parts installed in them. The extent of the parts and how critical they are have yet to be released, but that just drives home the fact or the topic that much more of just how important it is to screen for your parts.
Yeah, and it would really be nice to know the method of how they discovered this, and I'm sure it was something along the lines of the paperwork, somebody doing an audit, the supply group going, these numbers don't usually jive with what we typically order. And anybody who's spent time working on things, you start memorizing part numbers after a while just because you order so many of them. And I'm sure somebody coming in, what did we order again? -12 bolts. Well, the part number is usually this. Where do we order these from? Oh, we had to get them from a different supplier. Oh, well, was that approved? Because a lot of people don't know this. You can't just, for many companies, and especially like in the military side of aviation, you can't just go and say, oh, my normal vendor is out. I have to go find another vendor. But you can't just call somebody else up and say, hey, you guys make this? Yes. Cool. Put me down for 100. No, they have to go through like a whole vetting process to, make sure they have all the certifications.
Absolutely.
Creating what they're making.
Yes. So, according to a couple articles, and this is just me doing a quickie search on the interwebs, it says that the issue was initially flagged by TAP Air Portugal. I'm not sure if that's airlines. I could be wrong. But anyways, Air Portugal in July discovered some fraudulent documentation, I guess when they were doing internal audit or they're just doing like a supply screener. And they found some They found some of the parts in their CFM engines, which is shared between Airbus and Boeing, for those of you who don't know this. And the company in question is supposedly UK-based, and one of the owners is, at this time, we're at this time of knowing, is of Venezuelan descent. Now, whether they got these parts in South America or wherever they got it, that kind of just reemphasized some of the stuff that we've been saying, like, counterfeit parts, fake parts, or unauthorized parts usually come around from areas where you least hear about or places where they typically don't come from.
So this isn't a dig at our South American listeners at all. We're not saying less than adequate parts, but historically speaking, at least the times that they've been caught. And I remember a number of years ago, there was, at least in the corporate jet realm, there was fuel controls that were, I'm air quotes here, overhauled at these South American vendors. But what they were doing is they were buying the high-timed items from like different airlines around the world, like Six was just saying, right? Some UK, some Australian, some US, other European places. Those items would go high time. Those parts would go high time. They would get shipped. These overhaul facilities would buy them, overhaul them, and then sell them back to these vendors, right? And typically it'd be at a reduced price because they're overhauled. They're not brand new components. Well, what was happening, at least this is probably back in like the 2010 to 2015 time frame. Mm-hmm. And what was happening was they were taking these overhauled parts, kind of putting them through a parts washer and slapping a new piece of paper on it or a new sticker and putting it in a box and sending it back. without actually overhauling it. And so there was a high rate of failure in the field for these fuel controls of a specific make and model. And so a lot of people went, God, we've gone through 10 fuel controls in the last 5 months. What's going on here? So what a lot of operators do is they send in their supplier quality group, right? They go and investigate. Hey, let's take a trip to the supplier and see what's going on here. You guys are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I think that was a Colombian-based operation.
Ooh. Yeah, that's not a fun time. So again, to revisit a previous episode, we mentioned about like parts when they're made, as MVP has alluded to earlier. You can't just like pick these off the bunch or just pull it off a shelf anywhere. It has to have some kind of vetting. It has to meet some type of specification. And usually here in the U.S., they'll have some kind of authorization called like a parts manufacturer's authorization. It's pretty much saying like this part manufacturer, whether it be the original creator or a third party, they have some kind of authorization from that civil flight authority, in our case, the FAA, saying that this part, it meets all the required specifications needed for an aircraft. And again, it can either be the owner or the original maker of the part, or it can be a third party that makes a part that's so similar that you can't honestly tell them apart.
It basically says the processes, tools, equipment you use to manufacture this part are deemed, adequate by whatever your federal aviation administration, right? EASA, whoever, CI, was it CI? What was Canada? CID?
CSA. I'm fucking it up, man. Sorry, buddy. It's everybody in Canada. I'm having a total brain fart here. But that's just how much this blows us away, right? So, yeah, there's in either case, like, there's supposed to be some kind of written authorization or a vetting by that civil air authority, FAA, EASA, CASA, and so forth, saying that you can make this, right? And depending on the organization, say, for instance, the military in any country, they have a qualified production list or a qualified producers list, some kind of list that says not only are they allowed to make airworthy parts, they're allowed to make airworthy parts for the military. And this goes through a whole rigmarole of qualifications and standards that they have to meet and so forth, set forth by whatever military organization there is. So it's not like we just shoot over to a Home Depot or a Hammer Barn or something.
You mean you can't go to Napa Aviation?
I wish there was a Napa Aviation.
You know what though? I'd be lying if I said I've never built some test equipment while working on the road out of Napa sourced parts. Now, for all of you go and string me up here, these parts did not remain installed on the aircraft. They were a series of tubes, fittings, and gauges that we made to do like oil pressure tests and things of that nature, because we were hundreds of miles from home in the middle of the night, and we had to do what we had to do.
Right. And usually something like that is kind of like, you're not the final decision in this. Like, someone had to be like, hey, we're going to do this. Are you cool with it? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that's a good point, Six. We did always call the operator and basically say, hey, look, we're out here. We've done some troubleshooting and we've determined, think it's definitely fluctuations in the oil. We've checked things out. However, to properly test it per the manual, we have to have this test. We have to have a test kit, which we don't have. Now, in some cases, the operator has all these test kits and special tooling and stuff for the aircraft they operate. And oftentimes they'll drop ship them to you, right? There's a company there called Sterling. And it's essentially Uber Eats for aircraft parts delivery or test tooling delivery. Very pricey, but they run all hours of the day.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, so oftentimes they'll do that depending on the location, or sometimes they're going to go, man, it's going to be X amount of days till we get it to you. Just, can you put something together? Can do,
Yeah. I mean, that's a damn good service, especially for those on AOG, man. I wish they
Oh.
had something like that, man. Where I was
Yeah,
usually
I
we
mean,
just
you
have,
got to know some of the drivers pretty well.
oh yeah, no kidding, right? Like, oh, you something broke again? Like, yeah, man. Can you come over? Like, all right, fine. I got one delivery, but I'll be there. All right, cool.
Like,
Like,
wow, they sent you all the way out here? Like you're in Palm Springs or something. Yeah, well, that's crazy. I just ran into you in San Francisco last night.
yeah,
You know?
right. So again, like these parts, like they have to go through some kind of qualification or some type of authorization. And typically, these parts they usually come from your standard like original manufacturers, authorized third party, owner produced parts, which was its own thing. Go ahead and check that episode out too. Parts manufactured or overhauled by a repair station, like a certified repair station. That's the key word there. That's the key word there, right? So, going back real quick about this, so this company in question, once Air Portugal found out, like, oh hey, these things don't jive, they kind of started doing an inspection throughout the rest of their planes, and then other airlines kind of caught wind of it. They found some stuff, they popped too, and then the FAA caught wind of it, and they put on an alert saying, hey, if you have parts in the shelf or on the plane with this company or this type of part numbers, you might want to pull it off the line. And then that's when 4 commercial airlines here in the US kind of went like, ooh, that's not good. So there is some type of an alert system. There is a notification system out there. So like, hey, we have suspected unauthorized parts in the mix or in the heat of things. So you might want to double check yourselves. And that's with civilian authorities, military and other agencies have like NASA and stuff have their own notification system. And it's usually shot across everybody like, hey, be on the lookout or be aware of these parts may exist. And they treat it as any other part that broke. They take it out or they isolate it. They make sure that they don't accidentally mix it into other stuff. They tag it, flag it, whatever the case may be, so it doesn't accidentally get used. And from what we understand, or at least what we know at this point in time, there hasn't been a incident with these parts, or at least nothing tied to these parts yet. Hopefully, if there isn't any, and they kind of caught it in time. But
Yeah, like hopefully it was a clerical error that tipped somebody off, and they said, "Hey, wait a minute."
right. So, but imagine that, right? Like how just the simplest thing could have such a cascading effect. Now, unapproved or unauthorized parts can mean a whole slew of things, right? Like it wasn't overhauled or created to whatever standard your civil air authority is, or it didn't have the necessary paperwork to prove that it was airworthy. That can be a thing too.
Well, I know we've said that before, right? So you get a part and it shows up, despite how good it looks. If there's not paperwork that comes with it, do not install that part.
Absolutely correct. Yes, and it has
And
to.
sometimes, right? Sorry to cut you off, Six. And sometimes, though, the part may be good. For some reason, they just didn't send the paperwork with it.
Mhm.
So you call back to control. Hey, got this part in. Cool. Let us know when it's installed. Well, here's the kicker. That's why I'm calling you. It didn't come with any paperwork. And so then you'll wait a little while they run through the gamut on the back end, calling their supply chain and whatever else. And sometimes they'll either email it to you, or they'll give you, like, from control themselves, or whatever internal paperwork they have that gives you this little blessing and takes the responsibility off of you for a part without a tag, so you can still install it. I mean, you're still responsible for the work you do, but the owner operator is taking responsibility for a part that they ordered that came without paperwork.
Absolutely, yes. And sometimes I've actually seen this happen a few times where the manufacturer is good, the part is typically good, the paperwork's there, but the certification expired.
Yep.
Yeah, that's rare, but it has happened. And usually, how it goes about is like they made the part, in anticipation for the demand, which happens a lot, and in the midst of them making it, they fail to recertify for whatever qualifications for the Civil Air Authority, whatever that is, ISO 9001, AS 9100, or whatever. It lapsed, or they didn't meet it in time by the time the part was made, and it already shipped out before they could isolate or contain anything. Most times when that happens, they'll send out some kind of notice like, hey, FYI, if you see part numbers with these lots or these serial numbers or whatever, don't install them until we send you some paperwork justifying its existence or something like that. But sometimes, hey, humans are humans. We kind of forget things. And they don't realize that a part escaped into the wilderness until they've already installed it. So the part's good. The aircraft, the manufacturer is good. The paperwork is kind of good, but again, like some certification expired for whatever reason, or it lapsed, right? Which is they're normally qualified. And then what I've also seen too is we're doing a supplier quality audit. We found this supplier has been our go-to for however many years. They've made parts for us for so many years, but they failed an inspection or they failed an audit. So now we gotta kind of put a suspension on their parts, but they're already in the shelf, ready to get installed somewhere. And usually that message kind of takes a bit for it to cycle through, or it takes a while for someone to actually have to go through the stock room and figure out if these parts match or these serial numbers match from that supplier or whatever the case may be. There's a whole slew of stuff that can happen, but
you'll see aircraft grounded until they'll say, hey, belay that next flight, go out, pop the cowlings and check for this, or pop this panel here, or get under the nose cone and check for the part number on this. If it has a -1, we're good to go. But if it's a -2 or 3, we're SOL. We gotta replace that component.
Right. Yes. And MVP, you mentioned this before, where sometimes the documentation, in the effort to stay in business or an effort to kind of just make a quick buck, some places they'll just fake the funk, right? They'll forge certification or airworthiness certificates saying like, "Oh yeah, it passed, totally 100%," right? And then that's more rare, more uncommon than you would think. So it's not just like, oh, let me just go find someone who's good at Photoshop and then just make this stuff. You're gonna go to jail with a quickness if you do some shit like that. But it has happened, and usually, like when you see stuff like that, I'm like, this doesn't look right, or they're using the wrong revision to the forms or that certification form. So like, why the hell are we seeing Rev C? We're like Rev H. Who sent this?
Where did you get this document from?
Yeah, who sent this? Yeah, no, we're gonna need to see something else, right? But again, that just really drives home, like they some places, man, either their quality is not that great or they're intentionally trying to be sneaky. And in this case, with these couple airlines that we've mentioned earlier, it was a company trying to be sneaky. Why they decided to do that, don't know. And I'm pretty sure a good amount of people are going to jail for it.
You're talking about the UK-based company, not the actual airline, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I just want to clarify that. It sounded like you're like, the airlines were being sneaky. I was like, oh, so they went on Facebook Marketplace and said cheapest, sort from cheapest, and and said buy now.
Right. And some people, you might be asking like, well, why the hell would an aircraft install fake parts, right? Or would they care to install fake parts? For one, yes, they will care because that's hardcore illegal. And then two, like we're in a time frame now where the demand for airlines, or actually aviation in general, is kind of exceeding the means. Right, we have a shortage of aircraft. We have a shortage of mechanics, technicians. We're kind of, sort of, still. Actually, I think we are still in a shortage for pilots. So, whatever you can do to kind of cut costs, that you'll try to find the best economic means, right? To sustain yourself. And sometimes, like you make regrettable buys. if that's the nice way of saying it.
Yeah. Well, so look at it this way too, right? And I'll use like a restaurant as an example. You have your specific set of vendors that you buy your produce from, and you put in the same order every week for this produce. And then over a while, you notice your produce bill, you get a notification, hey, it's going to increase by $30. That's weird. Okay, I guess inflation. Then shortly thereafter, hey, it's going to increase by another 30. And you're going, wait a minute, why is this? Well, it's like use it to your, I'll tie in the cell phones, right? The longer you're with your cell phone provider, it seems like the least benefits you get. You just get more expensive rates, and so it forces you to shop around. So similar thing, right? So if you're in the restaurant, you go, okay, well, cool, thanks. Go ahead and cancel that order. I'm going to look over here for another vendor to give me a better price. So in doing so, it forces the other vendor to lower their prices, remain competitive. So they want to keep the business, right? So they go, okay, don't go over there, because you go back to them and say, hey, well, they gave us 50% off for 2 months or something like that. Oh, okay. We'll drop it down to this, and we'll also give you free tomatoes for the next 2 months or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So a sort of a similar thing happens in the aviation realm. So especially when it comes to like single source vendors, right? They're the only one who makes this particular product. So you're kind of at their will, right? They can charge you whatever, and they can, hey, we need this order filled ASAP. Yeah, we'll get to them. We get to it. But what are you going to do? You don't have any other option. But when there's multiple vendors who go out there and say, hey, what are your parts? We need a fuel control. All right, well, that's going to be $5,000. Or say $8,000. $8,000 for an overhauled fuel control. You're cooked. A brand new one's $7 or something like that, or $8,500. And like, yeah, it's $500 off. Like, no, that's not. So then you look around, and so some people try to cut into that market and get those people who are shopping around for new vendors, or to get into the market, right? They offer these extremely low prices. Well, why are they so low? Because they have zero overhead. They're not doing any work to overhaul these parts, to make sure to put them back to zero time, to ensure their safety, integrity of them, whatever else. It's literally the part. It's like a rotating door, a revolving door. It comes through. They slap a new sticker on it, put it in a box, and send it right back out.
I'm actually picturing that. That's the sad part. And it's actually one of the procedures too, depending on what parts they are. Some of them, they would say MAME when uninstalled, right? Or when the engineers or whoever says, yeah, let's scrap this thing, they actually have to mutilate this part to such an extent that salvaging this would be like next to impossible. And you actually have to show that to a responsible engineer or a responsible party. Like, this is me taking a sledgehammer to this part. Is it mutilated enough?
Yeah, right. It'll be sometimes you'll have to take an angle grinder or a bandsaw or something, and you have to, like Six said, put a nick in it in a certain spot that's not repairable no matter who it goes to.
Right.
Many of you, I always try to teach new guys this as it was taught to me. Say you're taking off a part because you're to facilitate other maintenance, but that part you took off has O-rings. Well, I always tell the new guys, as it was told to me, take those O-rings off immediately, cut them, throw them in the trash can. Let it not be able to be reused at all. I'll take the old ones off and I'll sit them here on the bench, and I'll throw them away when we're done. Don't cut them now, because there's a chance you might get it mixed up with the new O-ring, and we don't want to reuse it. Now, that's kind of a weak example. I know some O-rings can be reused, and whatever else, but that was just my example of maiming something so it can't be reused.
It's another one that used to be a big rash for a good amount of time was one-time self-locking nuts, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So for those who have not seen them before, these self-locking nuts, they're like one-time use. And the reason why is because when you get them, they're kind of oval-shaped. They look almost like egg-shaped. But once you thread them on and torque them in, that's when they kind of free form to whatever stud that they're being fastened to. And then once you take them off, it's like loose as shit. Like you can't have that same tightness. You can almost wiggle them loose. That's how deformed they've been. And they kind of do that on purpose, right? So you only use it one time, hence the name, right? And when you take them off, you're 100% supposed to just smash it up or gets like some nut cutters or whatever that tool is, where you actually have to split the fasteners and then toss it in the trash, because um, you might have run the risk of accidentally reinstalling said parts. And I have actually seen that happen before myself, where it was actually on a helicopter once. We put some self-locking nuts on an aircraft that we didn't know was already used, or at least the person that put it on didn't make sure that it was not used. And this aircraft went to go turn up, and the tail rotor almost wobbled off the plane. And just had they not caught that and know, like, yo, this is vibrating just a little too much, and then they shut the plane down. No harm, no foul. But had they not noticed, or if that plane was like spinning at, say, at its 100%, or the weather was a little extra choppy that day, for all we know, that tail rotor could have jumped off the plane and cartwheeled down the freaking flight line, possibly injuring like a shit ton of people. So that's the huge risk about like life limited parts, counterfeit parts, or parts that that you're not 100% sure if it's the right one. You know what I mean? And as MVP said, like, it can come from a multiple things, not just fake parts, like stuff that people just kind of hodgepodge together at their garage or some shit. It could also be parts that were good at one point, but now they're rejected, like high time parts that are well past their lifetime, but then they just slap a brand new sticker on it and then call it good. Or like in our case with the O-rings and the self-locking nuts. It sounds menial, it sounds real dumb, but as case have shown, especially with today's news, or at the time of today's news, it can escalate and cascade real fast. And
it just takes one incident, and then they go, anybody who's running these parts, check your shelves, quarantine the parts. All aircraft are grounded until this one-time inspection is performed.
Mm-hmm.
And while you say, okay, well, let's go do the one-time inspection. Well, in the grand scheme of things, that's massive money loss.
Yeah.
Every hour that passes. So it's very important. Another thing, talking about part numbers, it just kind of jogged my memory. Sometimes you get a part number in and you go, this isn't what I ordered. Well, oftentimes your IPBs, your illustrated parts breakdowns, they'll have multiple numbers, right? There'll be like an NAS number, an MES number, and a mill number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on who's ordering it. So one part can have a multitude of part numbers for different branches, I guess, so to speak. I don't know how else to say it, but
yeah,
different entities of the government,
Yep.
Civilian to military or whatever else. So oftentimes you might have to look into that, right? And you're like, this isn't what I ordered. I ordered mill whatever. This is NAS. You look in the manual. Oh, okay. Well, it's the same thing. It's just the parts tag they gave me said NAS on it instead of mill, but it's the same part. So
right.
In that case, you're good to move forward, but just double check those, right? You might, they gave me the wrong thing. Well, maybe not,
Yep.
Maybe not. Just go check.
Yep. And so I might be wrong, but there's also a section where it has, or a column anyway, that says usable on code. And
yep.
It will be like different part numbers, different manufacturers or whatever, or it will say that instead of -2, it will be -3, and like, what the fuck, you gave me the wrong one. But sometimes or another, they'll have like a usable on code, where it'll say like, oh, this part number is a substitute for XYZ. Right? Oh, okay, perfect, no problem. Moving on, right? But it has to say that. That's the thing. And sometimes, like the supply guys issuing out the parts, they don't know better, right? It just says -2 bolt 9/16. And so they go looking for -2 9/16 bolt. They don't find any in their shelf, but they see a -3 9/16 bolt. Oh, maybe this will work, right? And then they say, whether it looks the same size, looks the same material, fuck it, right? They'll send it down that way and send it over to you like, yo, what the fuck? What is this?
What do you give me here?
Yeah.
I think we have a comic about that, actually.
Yeah, we do, actually. So go check that out on Tapas. And we exaggerate a little bit about it, but it has happened. where we've actually got parts like the difference is by maybe 1 digit. They look almost identical, like almost perfectly identical, same threads, same whatever, right? But there's always that one like material difference between them, and sometimes you can't spot the difference. There was one instance where we had like 4 different washers, all 4 different part numbers. They all look 100% the same, and you wouldn't know they were different when they're installed, right? I'm like, fuck. Right. And then some people, they'll get wise, like, oh, some of them they have higher, lower recesses. Some of them the ends are flat or they're colored different and stuff like that. Sure, I believe you. I 100% believe you. But what's the stack up? What's the configuration? Like, what is it supposed to be? And can you spot that out without directly knowing what they are? Right. And that's kind of the problem too, because sometimes or another, when it's in an unauthorized configuration, that technically makes it an unauthorized part. If that makes any sort of sense to anybody. It's rare.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're deviating from manufacturer's design for operation. So, yeah, that's no good.
Yeah. So
unless you've got some sort of mod paperwork or whatever else you've worked to that's an approved design change. But yeah, any deviation from engineering, released engineering, it's unauthorized.
Oh yeah. Yep. So again, like most civil authorities, whenever someone kind of throws a red flag, yo, problem. Usually, if it's a big enough issue, they'll tell their civil air authorities and they'll issue out some kind of a notice, and that notice will either be like some kind of alert bulletin, it'll be like an all points message, suspected unauthorized part notification, something, right? And different organizations call them different. Sometimes there'll be unauthorized part notification. Sometimes they'll call it counterfeit part prevention notification, something, right? I can't list them all off because they're all alphabet soup acronyms and I can't remember them all. I'm sorry. But they'll shoot these out, and then that's when you kind of like, now it's on you to do the due diligence and purge through your supply. And this includes the ones on the plane too. And in most cases, as MVP mentioned, that if it's suspect on these usable on parts or on these aircraft or these systems, that aircraft's down, done. Like, it's down until it has that go ahead, like, hey, we've inspected it, it's good to go, or we've inspected it, it's good to go, now it's pending a replacement. Because that's another thing too. Because once you have identified a counterfeit, you have to have a usable replacement, and that's another side of that beast. Is, yeah, we've identified the problem, but we don't have a usable replacement for it. So what the fuck do we do? And I've actually had some instances going back to that one where the manufacturer's good, the part's good, the paperwork is semi-good, it's just expired or it's lapsed or whatever reason. In situations like that, I've seen people say, just leave it installed, use it as is, but it's limited to doing only this, right? Like it can only do taxis, it could only fly this high or something like that. Like, it's very limited in its operation until the paperwork catches up with it, or it's just grounded until the paperwork catches up, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, they might say, you got 5 flights to replace it.
Yes.
At that point, you're grounded.
Yes, I have seen that too. Or like this part is unauthorized for X amount of flights, so now you have to swap it out, or once it hits so many hours, it cannot fly anymore. It can only do XYZ until you get a replacement. More or less what MVP said. But I've seen somewhere it's with electronic equipment where it's still good. It's just technically not good per standard. So they kind of just let it roll until it fails, or they let it roll until that certain point. Then they just kind of disconnect it from the plane, and then now they're just flying without one. You know what I mean? I can't remember an exact example of that. It was something to do with avionics where it was like a redundant system where it's cool if we have it, but it's not detrimental if we didn't. It just kind of limits certain.
You might be limited to VFR flights on,
yes,
only for a while or whatever.
Yep. And that's mainly it. So it's kind of stuff that's kind of crossing together of all the stuff we said before, like with owner produced parts, um, and then having waivers, because that's in that plays into a big deal too. If you can get a waiver for these unauthorized parts, for counterfeit or fake parts, flat out no. But like some of them, but
Hard
some
no.
of but some of them, like say if it's owner produced or if it was third party created and their certification just lapsed, then they might just say, okay, just hang tight until they get their shit together and then we'll move on with life. Fair enough. Easy day. So, ways besides the notifications, how can we identify unapproved parts? Right. So we've kind of let the cat out of the bag already, but a good way is to check the price of the part and then bounce it off against like similar parts, right? Like say fuel controls, as MVP said, if it's $7,000 and it says it's either 1,000 or 10,000, like that doesn't sound right, like at all.
Why is this so much cheaper?
This might actually be a new one. Is like the turnaround time, right? Or the delivery schedule for some people. Like say like props, for instance. If a typical prop manufacturer says, "Hey, it's gonna take 8 weeks," and then here's this other one that says, "I'll give it to you in 10 days max." Like brand new, 10 days? No fucking way.
Yeah. How?
Yeah. Unless like you're literally their first customer ever, and they have like literally nothing else to do. But I highly doubt that. Especially if it's a flight critical part, say for a prop, like as I mentioned, there's no fucking way. Right. Or say or the big one, as we mentioned, is if the paperwork didn't come with the part or the supplier that gave it to you cannot provide like objective evidence saying that it's good to go. And that's a huge red flag right then and there. Like, hey, where's the parts tag for this? Or some cases they call it like the I'm trying to remember the acronym. It's like the service record card, I think is what it called, or service record. Yeah, I'm. Anyways, it's like a form that has like the full history of this part from manufacturer to overhauls to how many hours it has under it, all sorts of craziness. If it's not,
it's just a logbook for the component. Most of them, I know what you're talking about, but it's essentially just a logbook for the part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Date of manufacture, first overhaul, high time, second overhaul, high time again, whatever they did, or broke, internal gearing broke, gearing replace, all sorts of stuff.
Right. Yes.
And let's not discount the good old fashioned visual inspection.
Yes.
Upon part receivable, right? I'm sure all of you do that, but just as a reminder, you should definitely be looking over all the parts you get. I don't care if it's an O-ring, right? You're going to look at it, make sure there's no nicks in it right from the get-go. If it's a larger component, going back to the fuel control, look at it, and if it looks, the AN fittings that are sticking out of it, if those are all chewed up and marred up, and the case is kind of real dirty and scratched to hell, and it looks like they drug it behind the delivery van as they were delivering it, like that might be something to question too. Like, where do we get this thing from, right? And you might find out, like, hey, it just went in. It wasn't actually ready for overhaul. It just had this one fitting, an AN fitting crack that they had to replace. That's why this one looks new and the rest look beat up. And part of you wants to go, geez, if they already took it off to send it back for that, why not just replace them all? Well, money, I guess, we can pay for one -8 or, and cost this much, or we can replace them all when it's not even due for high time and spend way more. So maybe that's why. But if it looks like it was just drop kicked off the Empire State Building, then I would question. Just take it back and go, hey guys, where did this one come from? Was it overhaul or what happened to this thing? Because the paperwork, says it's good, but it doesn't really say where it came from and what it was doing. Just second, just back yourself up if you have any second guesses.
Yes. I would add to the visual inspection. I think you mentioned it, but the serial numbers, if it looks like it's been hand etched or if it's been stamped over, that's a huge indication that something's fucked up, right?
Yeah, or if that's a good point. Yeah, if the data plate looks a little wonky to you, or like something was scratched out and re-stamped, it's like, no, I don't think you're supposed to do that.
Because I've actually had that happen once where it was these avionics components. We were out of a bunch of them for quite some time, and then all of a sudden, 5 of them show up. I'm like, where the hell do we get these? And we're about to say, fuck it, we'll call it good because we need them. But we had some very stellar quality assurance dudes who looked through that to those parts, and they said, like, there's something up with these serial numbers. Like, it's not jiving. And they're like, what do you mean it's not jiving? Well, for one, like, the data plate is usually here, but it's over here. And there's 3 different serial numbers etched onto this part. WTF. And they went to say, yo, where's the part record log or the service record chart or whatnot? And they look like, none of these serial numbers jive. Where the hell do we get this thing? Long story short, like, someone tried to be real sneaky with it, and then they swapped out. They tried to forge like known good serial numbers with these bad ones, and they forgot to scratch off, I guess, the serial numbers from the known bad parts, and they just kind of recycled the same serial numbers for whatever much, and then they just forgot to scratch them off. So that was fucking real shisty from the start. Once we figured that out, like, yeah, no, who gave us this? All right, put them off to the side, take pictures of it. We need to get a full investigation rolling. The whole 9 yards. Like, everyone started like they started making everyone do what's it called? Like a memorandum, like some kind of memorandum for record saying, like, this is my statement of facts. You know what I mean? The 5 whys and who, what, when, where, why kind of shit. It was freaking wild, right? And you never would have guessed, like, who the fuck would do this, right? But it has happened. And
was it the actual vendor of the part that did it?
We don't know. I can't remember what happened with that investigation. I just remember, like, they made us write our whole record, and they said, okay, we got it, guys. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the right thing, and we'll let you know when we get the new ones. I guess the rumor mill didn't spread enough to tell us why, or maybe it was somebody really up there and they tried to keep it quiet. I don't know. So we did, or at least I didn't know what the end result was, but I did know that it all started because someone just decided to look through the serial numbers and match it up to the record. So that's another huge thing with the visual inspections. Now, this may be a little bit of a stretch for the average Joe mechanic, but it doesn't hurt to help. You could look through like any supplier audit paperwork, right? This includes like looking through like unapproved parts lists or who's currently authorized to make certain parts, right? Especially people in the military. If a part has some kind of prefix to it, or not a prefix, there's like a 3-letter code that's in the middle of the part. If it has like a certain lettering in the parts number or in the serviceability chart, that typically means that there's only certain amount of people who are allowed to make this, and it's more or less like a PMA but for military folks. If it has those 3-digit suffixes, make sure you bounce that off with the authorized user list or the PMA, because it'd be really easy for someone to just fake the funk and then you not know about it until something wrecks. Yeah, not fun.
No, never good days.
Yep. So, and there's actually almost every civil authority, FAA has it. I think EASA and other air authorities have it, where they'll have both a unapproved parts list or at least unapproved parts notification archive, and they'll also have a current PMA or product manufacturer authorization list. They'll have those both listed. Sometimes you might have to do a search box in their website or whatnot to find it, but it is there. So if you ever want to get smart with it, we'll throw the link in the description of this show notes too, if you really want to. But if if you so happen to have some free time, or you want to kind of just have peace of mind, or your part just looks questionable, just do a quickie search on your Civil Air Authority site, look up the authorized use list or the unapproved parts notifications. And if if that part number jives with the unauthorized part, just segregate it, take pictures, and start writing your 5 Ws or your 5 Ws. And then,
separate the part. If your organization has a material review board or a non-conforming materials process, run down through that to get all that going.
Yep. And likewise, the PMA, like if you ever want to question, or if you ever have a hesitance about a certain part, just again, look that up. And if it's on there, like, okay, it checks out. It's good. It's good to go. Right. That's another security for yourself. It's a little over the top for the average Joe mechanic, but for those of the people who are in general aviation, or they're on the road mechanics and like they're the only type of quality out there, might be a good idea to kind of get into practice of just kind of glancing at it a couple of times, or at least be familiar with it, what it's supposed to look like, because you never know when that's going to be the one where you show up and the part is made in some dude's garage and fuck who knows where.
Yeah. And I actually have dealt with vendors that do make parts in their garage. They were just certified to do so.
That's weird. You know what I mean? Like I never knew that was a thing. All right. But then again, like I'm used to dealing with like full on manufacturers or OEMs and stuff like that. So hearing that, oh yeah, I fabricated this on my own in my garage, I'm like, what? Right?
And it depends on the part, right? If it's like I don't know, but doesn't have to be in a environmentally controlled, operation, then I guess you're probably okay.
Gotcha. I get it. But yeah, like I didn't know that was a thing for the longest. And then when I finally saw a bunch, I think it was cannon plugs. Like not doesn't have the pins in it, but it's just the cannon plugs itself.
Yeah, the back shell and the housing.
The back shell and the housing. Like someone actually makes this in his or her garage. I'm like, say what? Like, yeah, totally legit, man. Look, here's the paperwork. Here's the authorized list. Here's their certification. Like, well, all right, well, whatever. If they're good to go, they're good to go. Can't say shit about that.
Yeah, I actually have friends of mine. They're certified, and they build wiring harnesses for a multitude of customers. Right? They order the raw material. Customer sends them the drawings, and they have the wiring boards up there, and they run all the wires for however many feet and whatever it is, and how many cannon plugs, and put all the pins and everything else, and coil it up, box it, slap the parts tag with it, and send it on its way.
Damn, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, man. They get up and literally just make coffee and walk out the back door to the garage, and they're at work.
Damn, that's the life right there. I want that. I want that. Like, to teach me your ways. How do you do that, right? Maybe not wiring harnesses for me, because I mean electronics, but I can do.
They also have to have certifications that cost $25,000, and they have to renew them every 2 years.
Ooh.
For certain customers, right? So for all those going, man, that's the life. I'm going to build wiring harnesses in my garage. Well, you can, but you have to to broaden your customer basis, you're going to have to invest some of your own money. Now you can bid some of that into your contracts, but you're not going to be able to bid all of it because, well, you won't get any customers.
This is true, especially for $25,000 every 2 years.
Yeah.
Woo, that's rough.
Pretty wild.
That is rough. Any final words on this matter, MVP?
No, yeah, I always say no and then keep talking. What a clown. Just be cognizant of the parts you're dealing with upon arrival. Check, double check, triple check all your visual inspections, your databases, paperwork. Just cross-reference everything to make sure that you're installing a legit, Civil Air Authority approved part.
Absolutely correct. But hey, let us know what you guys think. Like, have you ever encountered suspected unauthorized part, counterfeit, fake, and so forth. What some of the things that you guys had to do? Was it resolved? Did they tell you to keep using it? Did they tell you to mutilate it, destroy it, whatever the case may be? Hey, let us know in the comments. Let us know on our social medias, our emails, our website. The absolute best way to get a hold of us is our Discord channel via our Patreon. It's where we have all sorts of conversations like this where ourselves and our Patrons interact with each other, having a good teaching moments and just kind of spreading the knowledge that can more or less help us in all facets of aviation. And again, a lot of this is to just pass this along so we don't keep repeating the same mistakes, especially when it comes to fake parts, and really limiting that whole window of people thinking that it's a smart idea to kind of swindle whole ass aviation companies with fake parts.
Yep. Yeah, I'll be curious to know what happens with this vendor. I think you said they took the website down already for that vendor, but an investigation is going to be conducted. Somebody's probably going to go to jail. I'm almost certain of it. And if they show up to the facility and it's weirdly shut down all of a sudden, I think that gives you the answer.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I mean, shut down prior to the different air authorities shutting them down. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, most definitely.
That's a pretty good telling sign.
Oh yes. If they don't blast them on the news media channels, at that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, totally. Well, hey everybody, appreciate you for joining us, and we'll see you all again on the next one. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
We would like to take this time to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to make episodes, maintain our gear, and create merch for all of our listeners. With special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Eric Shaw, Dan Schubert, Ryan Frushauer, Kyle Keir, Mike Sherwood, Caleb Stockhill, and Jennifer Brofer. Thank you all so much for your support and patronage. If you like our show, please support us on Patreon. You'll receive awesome perks like access to our private Discord, discounts and early access to our merch, first glimpse of our comics and other projects, and so much more. You can further support us and show off your prowess as an aircraft specialist by visiting our shop at counselformaintenance.com. If you like classy or rugged watches, visit our affiliate Rockwell Time at rockwelltime.com. Use the code CX, the number 4MX to save 10% off your total order. If you have suggestions for the show or you'd like to be a guest on the show, send us a line on our contact us section at counselformaintenance.com, and we'll do what we can to get both your ideas and yourself on the show. Please support us on social media like Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Please check out our new comic series on the Tapas app. Like, share, subscribe, and comment on our comics. Let us know what you think. Thank you all so much for your support and listenership, and we will catch you all next time.